the hi-hat with the bass drum. So, remembering to get the hi-hat closed by depressing your foot on the pedal.
Totally closed position.
Yes, totally closed position. I mean, it's well worth just taking a moment to just think about posture and technique very briefly. Sort of relax sitting up straight with your feet flat on the floor so they're relaxed, creating the foundation for your playing. But it's actually, you know, quite an important point, so that when you play, your bedrock and your foundation is your bottom and your feet.
Right.
Everything else that goes on top is secured by your feet. So it's very important to have relaxed feet on the floor.
And you're kind of at a right angle, aren't you, with your legs?
That's
is that
right.
With the stool?
Well, I think so. I mean, there's some great examples of some fabulous players who sit in all sorts of strange positions, you know, which you know, kind of prove exceptions to the rule. But a kind of, you know, if we're going to get into the one cap fits all, I would say for most people, sitting up straight, keeping your body straight, a right angle of your top of your legs to the floor, and sort of a gentle 90 degrees here is appropriate for most people, which leaves you with your arms just above the snare drum. Okay. Well, as I've said, I don't want to get into too much technique, but that kind of general posture works for most people. One other caveat: if a drum teacher says this is the only way to do something, don't believe him.
Really?
Absolutely. There are so many different ways to play. It's good that you know, sort of challenge and explore what feels comfortable, but look at the sort of basic, you know, sort of science and principles of being comfortable and relaxed. Anyway, to our exercise number 5.
Dr. Brian.
After that minor diversion, just to recap, we're playing the hi-hat on all 4 beats. Let's just do that. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, nice chip sound. I tend to use the shoulder of the stick here. Yeah.
Well, you can see there's a few little gouges out of that.
Quite a few little gouges here. I tend to use that around just above the lip of the hi-hat. If you play with a bead, you get a thinner sound.
Oh yeah.
So I quite like to use the shoulder.
A more meaty sound.
Slightly more meaty sounds, gives you a bit more depth in that. So the hi-hat on all 4 beats, and then using leg strokes that I talked about very briefly in our introductory lesson on the bass drum on beats 1 and 3. So I'm going to put these 2 together: hi-hat on all 4, bass drum on 1 and 3.
I'll count you in.
You're very kind.
A 1, 2, 3, 4.
Perfect. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So we've got the consistency of the hi-hat there, hit with the right hand.
Yeah.
The right foot hitting the bass on 1 and 3.
Correct. So that's two-way coordination getting up towards the top of the kit now. So we now need two-way coordination incorporating the snare drum and the hi-hat. So the hi-hat is, of course, the same patterns we've just played, but then we've got the snare drum to negotiate. Now, this is the first time we come across the standard position for the drummer, which is right-handed player playing the hi-hat here, and the left hand comes underneath the hi-hat to play the snare drum. Now, with just a very, very brief note about snare drum technique, what I generally do is look to hit the snare drum somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
There are people who put little 50-pence piece type size bits and pieces in the middle of the drum, or a marking.
Well, like a little drawing on there.
Yes, which I've done on the Roland kit there. But where you play the drum, you're aiming for the same spot all the time. What I use a lot of the time for my playing, whether it's jazz, rock, pop, I tend to use the sound that you get when you clip the side of the rim of the drum as well, which is called a rim shot. That gives you quite a strong backbeat. I'll demonstrate. I'll just watch your ears for a second. So, whoa, those are 3 varying degrees of accuracy.
Yeah.
This is my consistent playing. But you can hear a bit of weight in there. If I just play with the bead in the centre of the drum, you'll hear a slight difference.
More echoey. Yeah,
bit thinner, a little bit more echoey, with the rim in.
So you're actually striking down on the rim there. And the angle of the... I was going to call it a chopstick then. The angle of the drumstick is pretty much flat then, but when you're hitting it in the middle, obviously you've got the angle sort of dipping it down a bit.
You have indeed. We've got a slight angle on the snare drum. Our sitting position and posture is that our arms are at a right angle, so if you've got your position right, that should produce that for you immediately. Let's do the exercise, which is number 6, which is hi-hat on all 4 beats, snare drum on 2 and 4. So would you count me in again?
If you wish me to, Brian.
Please do.
Coming to you, Brian Greene, in a 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I was just mimicking you then.
And very nicely so.
When you haven't got a drum kit around you, can you practice just like this?
You can practice in the air. Sometimes for some of my students, when they first come along, they don't have a drum kit. One of the things I quite often get them to do is kind of mimic the layout of this tabletop with a mouse mat. Because it's nice and quiet and you can play it. So I draw little circles on it and people can just practice there. So that, you know, there are many ways of practicing. But of course you need the dedication and motivation to do that.
Exactly. All right, so that was exercise 6.
It was.
Does exercise 7 mean then that we combine it all together?
We do indeed, and this is the sort of culmination of bringing all 3 parts together. Now, I think it's incredibly important that we understand the components of any groove, and this works in building up grooves and also breaking patterns down. Professional players often have to learn new patterns, they want to develop new patterns, they're still experimenting. And quite often what they will do is they'll look at a very difficult, say for instance a Latin groove, which has got complicated 4-way coordination, which may use the hi-hat foot as well, and by learning the individual parts and breaking them down and then bringing different two-way combinations in, then 3-way, they build their patterns up. So by no means are we taking a very kind of basic approach. This is a consistent approach to how you develop your coordination.
This is a standard. I suppose you've got to know what this hand is doing and then what this foot is doing, and then just layer it up like a sandwich.
And develop the combinations. So what we've got to do now is put our 3-way coordination together. And what I'm going to do is just demonstrate how sometimes I would perhaps bring all 3 instruments in together. 3 voices of the kit, as they're often referred to, different voices. So perhaps you might wish to start by playing the hi-hat. 1, 2, I'll play slowly, 3, 4, get that going, get your position nice and comfortable, perhaps then introduce the bass drum, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, then perhaps bring the snare drum in if you're feeling bold, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, sometimes it can fall over. Now, the thing to do is to try and keep going and then just bring them back in again, so develop some fluency in your playing.
Right.
So I'm bringing the snare drum back in on 2 and 4, and bring the bass drum back in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So essentially, what you're saying, I mean, if you fall, don't just throw the drumsticks in the air, push the drums aside, and storm off and
don't
cry.
Stop. Keep it going. Okay, so we've got a pattern together now. It's always much more fun playing with supported music like we have with our band in a box, effectively, with our software. So if we refer to our lesson notes here, what we can do is we can look at the next exercise, but with some supporting music.
Okay.
And of course the best thing to do is repeat exercises over and over and over and over. And if you've got some music to play to, that's fab. Now, by using the drum extractor in this way, we can actually control the speed and the balance of the exercise. But ideally what we want to be doing is playing to music that we love. That's what got us into playing an instrument in the first place. But what we're going to do is play along with the Gigajam drum extractor, which has a supportive band track. It means that we can control the tempo, use the environment to get the groove really working nice and gently, and get nice and comfortable with it all, and then we apply it to playing with the music we have in our collection.
Okay,
let's play along with the track.
Let's get that groove working.
Absolutely. I'm going to bring the hi-hat in. 1, 2, 3, 4. So bringing each of the voices in one at a time.
Yeah.
So once the hi-hat's nice and comfortable, I'm going to bring in the bass drum.
On 1 and 3.
On 1 and 3, here he goes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Now that's nice and comfortable. I'm feeling balanced. Try and drop the snare drum in on 2 and 4.
Simultaneous.
4, brilliant. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3,